The Story of India. Historical Journey of India. A land of over 1.4 billion people speaking hundreds of languages, practicing multiple religions, inhabiting landscapes from tropical beaches to alpine peaks. A democracy of unparalleled diversity. A nuclear power and spacefaring nation where ancient traditions pulse alongside cutting-edge technology. A civilization so old that its beginnings fade into mythology, yet a nation-state born only in 1947. This is the story of how the Indian subcontinent, birthplace of major religions, home to sophisticated civilizations, crossroads of cultures, and prize of empires, became the India we know today. To understand modern India, we must journey back 5,000 years, to the banks of a mighty river in the northwest, where one of humanity's greatest civilizations emerged and mysteriously vanished. Ancient India. Foundations of civilization. The Indus Valley Civilization. Archaeological sites at Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, ancient seals, planned cities. Around 3300 BCE, while Egypt was building pyramids and Mesopotamia was developing cuneiform, a sophisticated civilization emerged in the Indus River Valley, in what is now Pakistan and northwestern India. This was the Indus Valley Civilization, also called the Harappan Civilization. What makes this civilization remarkable is its sophistication. Harappa and Mohenjo-daro were planned cities with grid layouts, advanced drainage systems, standardized bricks, and public baths. The Great Bath at Mohenjo-daro suggests ritual bathing practices that may connect to later Hindu traditions. Multi-story houses had private wells and bathrooms with drainage. This was urban planning more advanced than anywhere else in the ancient world. The Indus people traded with Mesopotamia, as evidenced by seals found in both regions. They developed a writing system, the Indus script, that remains undeciphered to this day. We don't know what language they spoke, what they believed, or what they called themselves. And then, around 1900 BCE, this great civilization declined. Cities were gradually abandoned. The reasons remain debated: climate change, shifting rivers, earthquakes, floods, or some combination. There's no evidence of sudden violent conquest. The Indus Valley Civilization simply faded away, leaving behind ruins and mysteries. But the decline of one civilization created space for another. The Vedic Age, Aryans, and the birth of Hinduism. Shift to pastoral around 1500 BCE. Indo-Aryan peoples migrated into northwestern India from Central Asia. These nomadic pastoralists spoke Sanskrit, an Indo-European language related to Persian, Greek, and Latin. They brought horses, chariots, and a distinctive religious tradition. The Vedic period is named after the Vedas, ancient sacred texts composed in Sanskrit. The Rig Veda, oldest of the four Vedas, is a collection of over 1,000 hymns to various deities. These texts reveal a society of warrior priests, a polytheistic religion with gods like Indra the warrior king, Agni the fire god, and Vayuna the cosmic order keeper. Ritual atmosphere. Vedic religion centered on elaborate fire sacrifices performed by Brahmin priests. The sacrifice, yajna, was seen as maintaining cosmic order. Proper ritual was everything. This emphasis on ritual purity and priestly authority would profoundly shape Indian civilization. Over centuries, Indo-Aryan culture spread eastward across northern India. The later Vedic period saw the composition of philosophical texts called the Upanishads, which shifted focus from external ritual to internal spiritual knowledge. The Upanishads introduced revolutionary concepts that would become central to Hinduism: Brahman, the ultimate reality underlying all existence; Atman, the eternal self or soul; Karma, the law of cause and effect governing moral actions; Samsara, the cycle of death and rebirth; and Moksha, Buddhism, Jainism, and spiritual revolution. Meditation, seeking. The 6th century BCE was an age of religious ferment. Many people questioned Vedic rituals and Brahmin authority. Some sought deeper spiritual truths. From this ferment emerged two religions that would profoundly influence Indian and world history. In the kingdom of Magadha, a prince named Siddhartha Gautama abandoned his palace life to seek enlightenment. After years of asceticism and meditation, he achieved Buddhahood, awakening. He taught that suffering arises from desire and attachment, and that following the Eightfold Path leads to nirvana, the cessation of suffering and escape from rebirth. Teachings of compassion. Buddhism rejected Vedic ritual and the authority of Brahmins. It emphasized personal spiritual practice, ethical conduct, and compassion for all beings. It taught that anyone, regardless of caste, could achieve enlightenment. This radical egalitarianism appealed to many, especially merchants and urbanites. Around the same time, Mahavira founded or reformed Jainism, which taught extreme nonviolence, ahimsa, asceticism, and the path to liberation through right faith, knowledge, and conduct. Jain monks and nuns renounced all possessions and even wore cloth over their mouths to avoid accidentally inhaling insects. These new religions challenged the established order but didn't destroy it. Instead, Indian civilization would be characterized by remarkable religious diversity and debate. Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism would coexist, compete, and influence each other for centuries. One ruler would elevate Buddhism to imperial ideology and spread it across Asia. Empires and Golden Ages. The Maurya Empire, India's first great empire. Imperial grandeur, armies, administration, monuments. In 321 BCE, Chandragupta Maurya overthrew the Nanda dynasty and established the Mauryan Empire. With help from his advisor Chanakya, author of the Arthashastra, an ancient treatise on statecraft, Chandragupta built an empire spanning most of the Indian subcontinent. The Mauryan Empire was a bureaucratic marvel. It had a sophisticated administration, a network of spies, a large standing army, and control over trade routes. The capital, Pataliputra, was one of the world's largest cities, with massive walls and impressive palaces. But the Mauryan Empire's greatest ruler was Chandragupta's grandson, Ashoka the Great. Transformation, from conquest to compassion. Ashoka ascended the throne around 268 BCE and initially followed his grandfather's path of military expansion. In 261 BCE, he conquered Kalinga, modern Odisha, in a brutal war that killed over 100,000 people. The carnage haunted Ashoka. He experienced a profound conversion to Buddhism and renounced warfare. For the next 3 decades, he promoted Buddhism and Dharma, righteous conduct, through his famous edicts inscribed on pillars and rocks across his empire. Reading from Edicts. All men are my children, one edict proclaims. Just as I desire for my children that they may obtain every kind of welfare and happiness, so do I desire for all men as well. Ashoka promoted religious tolerance, built hospitals for humans and animals, planted medicinal herbs, and sent Buddhist missionaries across Asia, spreading Buddhism to Sri Lanka, Central Asia, and Southeast Asia. He transformed Buddhism from a regional Indian religion into a world religion. After Ashoka's death in 232 BCE, the Mauryan Empire declined and fragmented. But Ashoka's legacy endured. He remains India's most admired ruler, and the Ashoka Chakra adorns India's flag today. Classical India, Guptas and the Golden Age. Shift to cultural flowering, art, science, literature. After the Mauryan collapse, India fragmented into smaller kingdoms. Indo-Greek kingdoms emerged in the northwest, blending Greek and Indian cultures. The Kushana Empire controlled the Silk Road trade routes. Southern India developed independently under dynasties like the Satavahanas, Cheras, Cholas, and Pandyas. Then, in 320 CE, Chandragupta I, unrelated to the Mauryan founder, established the Gupta Empire in northern India. The Gupta period is called India's Golden Age. Under rulers like Chandragupta II, the Gupta Empire brought political stability and economic prosperity. But more importantly, it brought an extraordinary cultural and intellectual flowering. Montage, scientific discoveries, artistic creation, literary works. This was the age of Kalidasa, India's greatest Sanskrit poet and playwright, whose works like Shakuntala are still performed today. Hindu temple architecture reached sublime heights. Classical Indian music and dance traditions were codified. Science and mathematics flourished. The astronomer Aryabhata calculated pi to 4 decimal places, explained solar and lunar eclipses correctly, and proposed that the Earth rotates on its axis. Indian mathematicians developed the decimal system and the concept of zero, perhaps India's most important contribution to world civilization. The number zero revolutionized mathematics. It enabled complex calculations, algebra, and eventually computer science. Arabic numerals, actually Indian numerals transmitted through the Arab world, would transform global mathematics. Religious developments. Hinduism evolved significantly during this period. The great epics, the Mahabharata and Ramayana, were compiled in their current forms. These weren't just stories but repositories of philosophy, ethics, and cultural values that would shape Indian civilization. Every Indian knows the tale of Rama's righteous kingship and his wife Sita's devotion, or the Mahabharata's epic war between cousins and Krishna's philosophical discourse in the Bhagavad Gita. Devotional Hinduism, bhakti, emerged, emphasizing personal emotional devotion to gods like Vishnu and Shiva rather than ritual or philosophical knowledge. This made Hinduism accessible to all castes and classes. Buddhism continued flourishing. The university at Nalanda became the world's first residential university, attracting scholars from across Asia. Students studied Buddhist philosophy, logic, medicine, and grammar. But eventually, the Gupta Empire declined. Invasions by the Huns weakened it. Regional powers asserted independence. By the 6th century CE, the empire had fragmented. Medieval kingdoms and the coming of Islam. Transition, regional diversity, new challenges. The centuries following the Gupta collapse saw India divided into numerous regional kingdoms. This wasn't decline but diversification. South India, especially, flourished with powerful dynasties. The Chola Empire dominated southern India and Southeast Asia from the 9th to 13th centuries. Chola kings built magnificent temples like the Brihadiswara temple at Tanjavur, with its massive tower. They created a sophisticated administration and navy that dominated the Indian Ocean trade. Chola cultural influence spread to Southeast Asia, where Indianized kingdoms adopted Hindu-Buddhist culture, Sanskrit literature, and Indian art forms. In northern India, various Rajput kingdoms ruled, with warrior clans emphasizing honor, bravery, and martial prowess. They built impressive forts and fought each other in endless succession disputes. Then came a force that would transform India forever: Islam. Dramatic shift, new religion, new power. Arab merchants had traded with India's western coast for centuries, bringing Islam peacefully to Kerala and Gujarat. But Islam came to northern India through conquest. In 712 CE, Arab armies conquered Sindh. But the major Islamic invasions came later. From the 10th to 12th centuries, Turkic and Afghan Muslim rulers launched repeated raids into India from Afghanistan. Mahmud of Ghazni raided India 17 times, looting temples and carrying wealth back to his capital. In 1192, Muhammad of Ghor defeated the Rajput Confederacy at the Second Battle of Tarain. His general, Qutb-ud-Din Aibak, established the Delhi Sultanate in 1206, the first Muslim kingdom in India. The Delhi Sultanate lasted over 3 centuries, with 5 successive dynasties ruling from Delhi. It brought Islam as a major political and cultural force to India, though most of the population remained Hindu. The Mughal era, splendor and synthesis, the rise of the Mughals, epic music, empire building, conquest. In 1526, Babur, a descendant of both Genghis Khan and Timur, invaded India from Afghanistan. At the Battle of Panipat, using gunpowder weapons and superior tactics, he defeated the Delhi Sultan and established the Mughal Empire. Babur was a cultured man, a poet, memoirist, and connoisseur who loved gardens. But he found India too hot, too dusty, and too lacking in good melons. He died after just 4 years, his empire uncertain. His son Humayun lost the empire to rivals and spent years in exile. But in 1555, with Persian help, Humayun recaptured Delhi. A year later, he died after falling down his library stairs. His 13-year-old son Akbar inherited a fragile empire. He would transform it into one of history's greatest. Shift to greatness, the philosopher king. Akbar the Great, 1556 to 1605, was a military genius, an administrative innovator, and a visionary ruler. Though illiterate, possibly dyslexic, he was intellectually curious, gathering scholars, artists, and holy men of all religions for debates at his court. Akbar conquered most of northern and central India. But unlike previous conquerors, he didn't simply rule by force. He built a synthesis of cultures. Policies of inclusion. Akbar abolished the jizya, a discriminatory tax on non-Muslims. He married Rajput princesses and appointed Hindus to high positions. He created a new bureaucracy based on merit, the Mansabdari system. He promoted Persian as the administrative language while supporting Sanskrit learning. Akbar even attempted to create a new syncretic religion, Din-i-Ilahi, combining elements of Islam, Hinduism, Christianity, and Zoroastrianism. It didn't survive him, but it showed his commitment to religious harmony. Under Akbar, Mughal culture blossomed. Persian and Indian artistic traditions merged. Mughal miniature painting reached sublime heights. Architecture combined Islamic and Hindu elements. The Mughal court became a center of art, literature, and learning. The Mughal zenith and the Taj Mahal. Golden Age, beauty, wealth, power. Akbar's successors, Jahangir and especially Shah Jahan, continued building the empire's glory. Shah Jahan, 1628 to 1658, was the greatest builder in Mughal history. He created the Red Fort in Delhi, the Shalimar Gardens in Kashmir, and expanded the Lahore Fort. But his masterpiece was the Taj Mahal. The Taj Mahal in all its glory. Built as a mausoleum for his beloved wife Mumtaz Mahal, who died in childbirth, the Taj Mahal took 22 years and over 20,000 workers to complete. It combined Persian, Islamic, and Indian architectural elements into perfect harmony. White marble inlaid with precious stones, reflecting pools, geometric gardens, calligraphy from the Quran. It considered the finest example of Mughal architecture and one of the world's most beautiful buildings. Legend says Shah Jahan planned to build a black marble mausoleum for himself across the river, but this is likely apocryphal. What is true is that his son Aurangzeb imprisoned him in Agra Fort, where Shah Jahan spent his final years gazing at the Taj Mahal, his monument to love turned into a view from his prison. Darkness descends. Aurangzeb, 1658 to 1707, was the last great Mughal emperor, but his reign sowed the seeds of the empire's destruction. A pious Orthodox Muslim, he reversed Akbar's tolerant policies. He reimposed the jizya tax on Hindus. He destroyed Hindu temples and discriminated against non-Muslims. He expanded the empire to its greatest extent, conquering most of the Deccan in southern India. But constant warfare exhausted the empire's resources. His religious policies alienated Hindus, especially the Marathas and Rajputs. Rebellions erupted across the empire. When Aurangzeb died in 1707, the Mughal Empire began its long decline. Later emperors were weak, dominated by powerful nobles and unable to control regional governors. The rise of regional powers. Fragmentation, new powers emerging. As the Mughal Empire weakened, regional powers asserted themselves. The 18th century saw the emergence of successor states and the rise of new powers. The Marathas, under leaders like Shivaji and the Peshwas, built a powerful confederacy in western India. They practiced guerrilla warfare, carved out an empire, and at their height controlled much of India. Maratha light cavalry raided from the Deccan to Delhi to Bengal, collecting tribute and challenging Mughal authority. In Punjab, the Sikhs, followers of a religion founded by Guru Nanak in the 15th century, combining elements of Hinduism and Islam while rejecting both caste and idol worship, established a powerful kingdom under Maharaja Ranjit Singh. In the south, Hyder Ali and his son Tipu Sultan built the kingdom of Mysore into a formidable military power, adopting European military techniques and even pioneering the use of rockets. Bengal, Awadh, and Hyderabad became effectively independent under their Mughal governors, who ruled as Nawabs and Nizams. Ominous arrival. But while Indian powers fought each other, a new force was quietly establishing itself on the coasts, the European trading companies. Portuguese, Dutch, French, and especially the British East India Company had established trading posts. They seemed insignificant, merchants seeking spices and textiles. They would conquer all of India. Colonial India, The British Raj, the East India Company's conquest. Shift to colonialism, trading posts to conquest. The British East India Company arrived in India in 1600, granted a royal charter to trade. For 150 years, it remained primarily a commercial enterprise. But in the mid-18th century, taking advantage of Mughal decline and Indian political fragmentation, the company transformed from trader to conqueror. The turning point came in 1757 at the Battle of Plassey. Battle sounds, cannon fire, monsoon rain. The company's forces under Robert Clive defeated the Nawab of Bengal through superior discipline, artillery, and betrayal. Clive had bribed the Nawab's General Mir Jafar to defect during battle. This victory gave the company control of Bengal, the richest province in India. Bengal's wealth funded further conquests. The company's army, composed mainly of Indian soldiers called sepoys commanded by British officers, conquered territory after territory. The Marathas were defeated in a series of wars. Tipu Sultan was killed in 1799 defending his capital Srirangapatna. The Sikhs fell in the 1840s after Ranjit Singh's death. By 1850, the British East India Company controlled most of India through a combination of direct rule and alliances with subordinate Indian princes. Exploitation and transformation. Company rule brought profound changes. British administrators imposed their legal systems, English education, and Western ideas. They built railways, telegraph lines, and irrigation systems, infrastructure that served British interests but also modernized India. But company rule was also exploitative. India's traditional textile industry was destroyed to benefit British manufacturers. Famines became more frequent and deadly as company policies disrupted traditional food security systems. The Great Bengal Famine of 1770 killed an estimated 10 million people, one-third of Bengal's population. Indian soldiers in the company's army grew increasingly resentful. They received lower pay than British soldiers and faced religious insensitivities. Rumors spread that new rifle cartridges were greased with beef and pork fat, offensive to Hindu and Muslim soldiers respectively. In May 1857, sepoys mutinied. Dramatic uprising. The Great Rebellion. The Indian Rebellion of 1857, called the Sepoy Mutiny by the British and the First War of Independence by Indian nationalists, began at Meerut and spread across northern India. Sepoys killed British officers, seized Delhi, and proclaimed the elderly Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah II as Emperor of India. For over a year, rebels fought British forces. Some Indian rulers joined the rebellion, others remained loyal to the British. Atrocities were committed by both sides. Rebels massacred British civilians at Kanpur. British forces carried out indiscriminate reprisals. The British eventually crushed the rebellion with brutal efficiency. Bahadur Shah II was tried and exiled to Burma, ending the Mughal dynasty after over 3 centuries. The rebellion failed, but it shook British confidence and changed everything. The British Raj, Empire and Reform. Transition to direct rule. The Victorian Empire. In 1858, the British Crown dissolved the East India Company and assumed direct control of India. Queen Victoria became Empress of India. The British Raj, British rule, had begun. The Raj would last 89 years and profoundly shape modern India. Montage, railways, schools, Bureaucracy. The British built extensive infrastructure. Railways connected India's vast distances. By 1900, India had the fourth largest rail network in the world. Telegraph lines enabled rapid communication. A modern postal system was established. English education created an Indian middle class fluent in English and Western ideas. The British created a unified administrative system, imposing common laws and bureaucracy across India's diverse regions. This inadvertently helped create an Indian national identity. Indians from different regions, speaking different languages, united by their common subjugation. But British rule was fundamentally exploitative. India's wealth flowed to Britain. India's economy was structured to serve British interests. Raw materials exported, British manufactured goods imported. India went from producing 23% of world GDP in 1700 to less than 4% by 1950. Intellectual awakening, reform movements. The 19th century saw Indian intellectual awakening. Reformers like Raja Ram Mohan Roy advocated modernizing Hinduism, eliminating practices like sati, widow burning, and child marriage, and embracing Western education while maintaining Indian identity. The Bengal Renaissance brought literature, science, and philosophy to new heights. Rabindranath Tagore would become India's first Nobel laureate in literature. But the most important development was growing nationalism. The independence movement. A rising tide, nationalism and resistance. The Indian National Congress was founded in 1885, initially as a moderate forum for educated Indians to petition for gradual reforms. But as British rule continued exploiting India and denying Indians political participation, the Congress became more militant. The 1905 partition of Bengal by Lord Curzon, dividing the province along religious lines, sparked massive protests and the Swadeshi movement, boycotting British goods and promoting Indian industries. Then came World War I. Wartime contribution and betrayal. Over 1.5 million Indian soldiers fought for Britain in World War I. Indians contributed enormously in money and materials. Many believed that loyal service would be rewarded with self-government. They were bitterly disappointed. Instead, the British imposed the repressive Rowlatt Act, allowing imprisonment without trial. On April 13, 1919, in the city of Amritsar, British Brigadier General Reginald Dyer ordered troops to fire on an unarmed crowd gathered in Jallianwala Bagh, a walled garden. The troops fired for 10 minutes into the trapped crowd. At least 379 people were killed, over 1,200 wounded. Turning point. The Jallianwala Bagh massacre shocked India and awakened millions to the violence underlying British rule. It radicalized Indian nationalism and turned moderates into militants. And it brought forward a leader who would transform the independence movement, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. Freedom and partition Gandhi and non-violent resistance. Iconic imagery, Gandhi with spinning wheel, salt march, mass protests. Mohandas Gandhi had trained as a lawyer in London and worked in South Africa, where he developed his philosophy of satyagraha, non-violent resistance based on truth and moral force. Returning to India in 1915, he became the Congress's leader and transformed Indian nationalism. Gandhi was unlike any political leader before him. He wore simple homespun cloth, lived austerely, and identified with India's poorest. He spoke of self-reliance, traditional values, and moral purification. He made politics accessible to the masses. Non-cooperation movement. In 1920, Gandhi launched the non-cooperation movement, urging Indians to boycott British institutions, schools, courts, goods. Millions joined. For the first time, India's masses participated in nationalism. The British were stunned by the movement's scale and discipline. But when violence erupted, Gandhi suspended the movement, believing that non-violence was absolute. Critics accused him of sacrificing victory for principles, but Gandhi insisted that means mattered as much as ends. In 1930, Gandhi launched his most brilliant campaign, the Salt March. Iconic scene, the March to the Sea. The British monopolized salt production and taxed this essential commodity. Gandhi announced he would march 240 miles to the Arabian Sea and make salt illegally. On March 12, 1930, the 61-year-old Gandhi began walking. Thousands joined him. The world's press followed. On April 6, Gandhi reached the coast and picked up a lump of salt. This simple act broke British law and symbolically broke British authority. Across India, millions made salt. The British arrested over 60,000 people, including Gandhi. The Salt March didn't immediately win independence, but it demonstrated that British rule rested on Indian cooperation and that cooperation could be withdrawn. Through the 1930s, the Congress grew in strength. Gandhi remained its moral force, while younger leaders like Jawaharlal Nehru and Sardar Patel handled practical politics. The Congress won elections under limited self-government, giving Indians experience in administration. World War II and the final push. Global conflict, India's role and sacrifice. When World War II began in 1939, Britain declared India at war without consulting Indian leaders. The Congress was outraged. Gandhi and Nehru opposed Nazism but demanded Britain grant India independence first. Britain refused. In 1942, Gandhi launched the Quit India movement, demanding immediate British withdrawal. "Do or die," he proclaimed. The British arrested Congress leaders and suppressed the movement with force. Over 100,000 were imprisoned. Meanwhile, 2.5 million Indian soldiers fought for the Allies in World War II, serving in North Africa, Europe, and Southeast Asia. The Indian economy was mobilized for the war effort. Bengal suffered a horrific famine in 1943 that killed an estimated 2 to 3 million people, partly caused by wartime policies that diverted food to Allied soldiers. The emergence of Pakistan. But independence was complicated by a growing challenge, the demand for Pakistan. The Muslim League, led by Muhammad Ali Jinnah, had long advocated for Muslim interests within a united India. But as independence approached, Jinnah became convinced that Muslims needed their own nation. He demanded Pakistan, a separate Muslim state. The Congress, committed to a secular united India, initially refused. Hindu-Muslim tensions escalated. Communal riots erupted. Direct Action Day in August 1946 led to terrible violence in Calcutta, killing thousands. British exhaustion. By 1945, Britain was exhausted by World War II. Its empire was crumbling. The cost of holding India against rising nationalism was unsustainable. In 1947, the new Labour government decided to grant India independence, quickly, perhaps too quickly. Lord Mountbatten was appointed the last viceroy with a mandate to transfer power by June 1948. But faced with escalating violence, he advanced the deadline to August 15, 1947. Partition and Independence, 8. Joyous and tragic, independence and catastrophe. India would gain independence. But it would be partitioned, divided into Hindu-majority India and Muslim-majority Pakistan. The partition plan was rushed and chaotic. British lawyer Cyril Radcliffe was given just 5 weeks to draw borders dividing Punjab and Bengal. He had never been to India before. His lines divided provinces, split communities, separated families. Midnight, August 14 to 15, 1947. On the night of August 14 to 15, 1947, India gained independence. Jawaharlal Nehru, India's first Prime Minister, delivered his famous Tryst with Destiny speech. At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom. A moment comes, which comes but rarely in history, when we step out from the old to the new, when an age ends, and when the soul of a nation, long suppressed, finds utterance. There was celebration in Delhi and across India. The British Union Jack was lowered, and the Indian tricolour was raised. Freedom at last. But in Punjab and Bengal, horror unfolded. Descent into violence, the partition massacres. Partition triggered the largest mass migration in human history. Over 10 million people fled, Hindus and Sikhs from Pakistan to India, Muslims from India to Pakistan. Trains arrived at stations filled with corpses. Villages were massacred. Women were abducted and raped in massive numbers. The death toll remains uncertain, estimates range from 200,000 to 2 million. The psychological scars endure to this day. Gandhi, heartbroken by partition and violence, worked tirelessly for Hindu-Muslim reconciliation. On January 30, 1948, he was assassinated by a Hindu nationalist who thought Gandhi favoured Muslims. India mourned the father of the nation. Modern India, building a nation. Nehru's India, building democracy. Hopeful beginning, nation building. Independent India faced enormous challenges. It was desperately poor, with most people illiterate and living in villages. It was divided by caste, religion, language, and region. Many observers doubted India could remain united or democratic. They underestimated India's resilience and its leader's vision. Jawaharlal Nehru, Prime Minister from 1947 to 1964, set India's course. A socialist influenced by British Fabian thought and Soviet planning, he envisioned a secular, democratic, industrial India. Constitutional foundations. India's constitution, adopted in 1950 and drafted primarily by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, a Dalit leader who overcame caste discrimination to become a brilliant scholar, is one of the world's longest and most comprehensive. It guarantees fundamental rights, establishes a parliamentary democracy, and promises equality regardless of caste, religion, or gender. Ambedkar's vision was revolutionary. True democracy required not just political rights but social and economic transformation. The Constitution abolished untouchability and provided affirmative action for historically oppressed castes and tribes. Nehru pursued industrial development through 5-year plans, building steel mills, dams, and factories, temples of modern India, he called them. He established the Indian Institutes of Technology to train engineers and scientists. He promoted scientific research and atomic energy. Non-alignment and foreign policy. In foreign policy, Nehru championed non-alignment. India would align with neither the United States nor the Soviet Union during the Cold War. India would maintain independence and moral authority. Nehru became a leader of the non-aligned movement alongside Egypt's Nasser and Yugoslavia's Tito. But Nehru's idealism faced harsh realities. In 1962, China invaded India in a border dispute. Indian forces, unprepared and poorly equipped, suffered a humiliating defeat. Nehru died in 1964, a broken man, his faith in Asian solidarity shattered. From Indira to liberalization. Political tumult, the Nehru-Gandhi dynasty. After brief leadership by Lal Bahadur Shastri, Nehru's daughter Indira Gandhi, no relation to Mahatma Gandhi, she married Feroz Gandhi, became Prime Minister in 1966. She would dominate Indian politics for decades. Indira was controversial and contradictory. She nationalized banks and abolished princely privileges, championing the poor while concentrating power. Her slogan Garibi Hatao, remove poverty, resonated with millions. In 1971, India fought a war with Pakistan over Bangladesh's independence. When Pakistan's military regime brutally suppressed Bengali nationalism in East Pakistan, millions of refugees fled to India. India intervened militarily, defeated Pakistan decisively in 2 weeks, and helped create Bangladesh. Indira Gandhi was at the height of her popularity. But in 1975, faced with corruption charges and political opposition, she declared a national emergency. For 21 months, civil liberties were suspended, opposition leaders imprisoned, and press censored. Forced sterilization programs were implemented. This was India's darkest hour for democracy. Democracy restored. 9. In 1977, Indira lifted the emergency and called elections, expecting to win. Instead, Indians voted her out overwhelmingly. Democracy had survived its greatest test. Indira returned to power in 1980, but her second term ended tragically. In 1984, she ordered the army to storm the Golden Temple in Amritsar, Sikhism's holiest shrine, to remove Sikh militants demanding an independent Khalistan. In October 1984, her Sikh bodyguards assassinated her in revenge. Anti-Sikh riots erupted in Delhi, killing thousands. Her son Rajiv Gandhi became Prime Minister, promising modernization and computerization. But his government was tainted by corruption scandals. In 1991, he too was assassinated, killed by a Tamil Tiger suicide bomber. Economic transformation. That same year, 1991, India faced an economic crisis. Foreign exchange reserves dropped to barely 2 weeks of imports. India was forced to seek IMF loans and implement economic reforms. Finance Minister Manmohan Singh launched liberalization, dismantling the license raj of excessive regulation, opening India to foreign investment and embracing market economics. This transformed India's economy. Contemporary India, challenges and achievements. Rapid change. Modern India emerging. The post-1991 era saw India's rapid transformation. GDP growth accelerated, averaging 6 to 7% annually. A burgeoning middle class emerged. Indian IT companies like Infosys and Wipro became global players. Bangalore became the Silicon Valley of India. Indian professionals succeeded worldwide. India's democracy deepened. Regional parties gained power. Lower castes asserted political rights. In 1997, K.R. Narayanan became India's first Dalit president. In 2007, Pratibha Patil became India's first woman president. But India also faced continuing challenges. Persistent problems. Poverty remains widespread, though hundreds of millions have escaped it, hundreds of millions still struggle. Inequality has increased. Infrastructure lags behind East Asian competitors. Education quality varies dramatically. Healthcare is inadequate for many. Caste discrimination persists despite legal equality. Communal tensions between Hindus and Muslims occasionally erupt in violence. Gender inequality and violence against women remain serious problems. Conflict with Pakistan continues. 3 wars have been fought, and Kashmir remains disputed. In 1999, India and Pakistan fought a limited war in Kargil. Both nations tested nuclear weapons in 1998, raising stakes dangerously. Terrorist attacks, including the horrific 2008 Mumbai attacks, have killed thousands. India's rise. Yet India's achievements are remarkable. It's the world's largest democracy, with over 900 million voters participating in elections. It has maintained democratic institutions despite diversity, poverty, and challenges that have destroyed democracies elsewhere. India's economy is now the world's fifth largest and fastest growing major economy. India is a space power. It has sent missions to the Moon and Mars, and leads in low-cost space technology. India is a nuclear power and military force. India's cultural soft power, Bollywood films, yoga, cuisine, spreads globally. In 2014, Narendra Modi's Bharatiya Janata Party won a landslide victory, ending decades of Congress dominance. Modi promised development, efficiency, and restoring India's pride. His government has pursued infrastructure development, digital initiatives, and Hindu nationalist policies. But Modi's tenure has also seen increased communal polarization, democratic backsliding concerns, and debates over India's secular character. The 2019 revocation of Kashmir's special status and the controversial Citizenship Amendment Act have sparked protests and debate over what kind of nation India should be. Legacy: how history shaped India today. To understand India today requires understanding its vast history, all 5,000 years of it. From the Indus Valley Civilization, India inherited urban sophistication and cultural continuity across millennia. The archaeological mysteries remind us how much we've lost, but also how much endures. From the Vedic age and Upanishads came the philosophical and spiritual traditions that define Indian civilization. The concepts of karma, dharma, and the eternal quest for truth beyond material existence continue shaping Indian worldviews. From Buddhism and Jainism came principles of non-violence, tolerance, and the recognition that multiple paths to truth exist. India's religious diversity, with Hinduism, Islam, Sikhism, Christianity, Buddhism, and Jainism coexisting, is ancient, not modern. From the Mauryan and Gupta empires came the experience of unified rule, administrative sophistication, and cultural flowering under strong central authority. The memory of these golden ages shapes modern India's ambitions. From the Mughals came architectural splendor, cultural synthesis, and the challenge of religious diversity. The Taj Mahal symbolizes India's ability to create beauty from the fusion of different traditions. But Aurangzeb's intolerance reminds us how easily pluralism can collapse into conflict. Colonial legacy, complex inheritance. British colonialism's legacy is complex and contested. It brought railways, English language, Western education, and democratic institutions. But it also brought economic exploitation, famines, cultural humiliation, and the trauma of partition. Modern India must continually negotiate this complicated inheritance. The independence movement gave India its founding values: non-violence, secularism, democracy, social justice. Gandhi remains the moral touchstone, though his economic vision of village self-sufficiency was rejected. Nehru's democratic socialism shaped India for decades, though it's been abandoned in economics while persisting in political rhetoric. Partition's trauma continues haunting the subcontinent. India and Pakistan's hostility shapes regional politics and distorts development priorities. The Kashmir conflict remains unresolved, a continuing source of violence and tension. India's unique experiment. Modern India is conducting humanity's most ambitious experiment. Can an enormously diverse, desperately poor, deeply traditional society maintain liberal democracy? Can unity coexist with diversity? Can rapid modernization preserve cultural identity? Can development reach the hundreds of millions still in poverty? India's diversity is staggering: 22 official languages, countless dialects, multiple religions, thousands of castes, cuisines varying by region, classical dance forms specific to states. India is not a nation-state in the European sense, but a civilization state, comparable more to the entire European Union than to any single European country. This diversity is India's greatest challenge and greatest strength. Managing it requires constant negotiation, compromise, and tolerance. The failure to manage it brings violence and separatism. The success in managing it demonstrates human possibility. Contemporary tensions. Today, India faces a fundamental question about its identity. Is India a secular democracy where citizens of all religions are equal? Or is India fundamentally a Hindu nation where minorities must accommodate the majority? This debate isn't new. It divided Congress and the Muslim League, Gandhi and Jinnah, secular nationalists and Hindu nationalists. But it's intensified in recent years. India must also balance tradition and modernity. How does a society preserve valuable traditions while eliminating oppressive practices like caste discrimination? How does India maintain family values while promoting gender equality? How does it preserve linguistic diversity while ensuring national communication? These tensions produce both creativity and conflict. India in all its complexity. From the Indus Valley to Silicon Valley, from the Vedas to satellites orbiting Mars, from the Buddha's teachings to Bollywood's global reach, India's journey has been extraordinary. It's a story of spiritual seeking and material striving, of invasion and absorption, of creation and destruction. It's a story of how an ancient civilization became a modern democracy, how colonized people reclaimed freedom, how poverty-stricken millions are building prosperity. Contemporary India, tech workers, farmers, students, artists, scientists, street vendors, temple priests, mosque muezzins, church choirs. Walk through any Indian city today and you'll see layers of history coexisting. Ancient temples next to high-tech offices. Ox carts sharing roads with luxury cars. Women in traditional saris texting on smartphones. Cows wandering streets near shopping malls. Street vendors selling snacks beside Starbucks. This is India's genius, the ability to hold contradictions, to maintain continuity through change, to preserve identity while embracing transformation. It's messy, chaotic, frustrating, and inspiring. India has problems, enormous, serious, sometimes overwhelming problems. Poverty, inequality, corruption, communalism, gender discrimination, caste prejudice, infrastructure deficits, environmental degradation. But India has something else: resilience, democracy, diversity, youth, ambition, and the vitality of a civilization confident in its ability to overcome challenges because it has overcome them for thousands of years. Philosophical reflection. Perhaps India's greatest gift to the world isn't its spices or software, its yoga or its epics. It's the demonstration that diversity can be strength, that democracy can function in the most challenging circumstances, that ancient wisdom and modern science can coexist, that there are multiple paths to truth. The Rig Veda, composed over 3,000 years ago, proclaimed, "Truth is one, the wise call it by many names." This philosophical pluralism, the acceptance that different paths lead to truth, is India's foundational principle. In a world increasingly divided by claims of absolute truth, India's embrace of multiplicity offers wisdom. Final thoughts. India's story is unfinished. The nation that emerged from partition trauma is still defining itself. The society that produced both the Buddha and the atom bomb is still balancing spirituality and power. The democracy that gives voice to over 1 billion people is still learning how to hear all those voices. What's certain is that India matters. With over 1.4 billion people, nearly 1/5 of humanity, what happens in India affects the world. As India rises economically, asserts itself geopolitically, and navigates its identity crisis, we all have a stake in its success. For 5,000 years, through empires and invasions, triumphs and tragedies, India has endured. The civilization that gave us yoga and zero, the Taj Mahal and Tagore, Gandhi and Bollywood continues evolving. The ancient meets the modern. The sacred encounters the secular. Diversity confronts unity. And through it all, India endures, complicated, contradictory, chaotic, creative, and compelling. This is India's story, past, present, and future. The story of 1 billion dreams, 1,000 languages, 100 gods, and one remarkably resilient democracy. And the story continues. The end. Subscribe now to track the history of the world, one nation at a time.